Chapter 11. Amon. By, dared answer. Damn it, I thought we had more time. I grunted as we strained under the immense pressure of Amon's strength. We were being pushed deeper into the ground with every beat of his wings. Each flap felt like a powerful strike from a hammer, and we were helpless stakes being pummeled deeper into the earth. I tried my best to get my footing and I gripped the handle of Behemoth tightly. I ran my fingers gently into a comfortable position along the golden vines. I took a deep breath and let my mind and emotions seek out Behemoth. If you try that again, you will pass out. I could hear Behemoth's thoughts. I knew he was right. We were powerless. It immediately put into perspective with how death was toying with me. I had trained so hard with Odin for years, and yet this was all I had to show for it. I was about to give up hope when I heard Grace's innocent-sounding voice turn sour. "Get off of me, you creep!" she screamed as she turned and swung her coffin at the demon. She missed but was able to free us. Puro, Miyama, you are so sexy right now, I could kiss you. Felipe leaned in for a smooch, but Grace swung around on her heel and brought her coffin down on top his head. Amon had vanished and the weight was released. We all jumped into positions and braced ourselves for Amon to reappear. Moments went by. I was scared at how weak I truly was and how foolish I was for thinking I was ready for this. Three figures soon began to walk out of the forest from the direction of Amon's kingdom. Amon was leading the other two. They swaggered along next to the massive crater that had opened from Death's strike. The two escorting Amon seemed familiar. One was a thin pale man with long black hair. His hair had a white stripe down the left side. The other was a gorgeous woman with a large elegant black wing on her right side. They entered the graveyard and Amon stopped shy of mine and Fenrir's gravestone. "Here lies one dead son of a bitch." Amon scoffed and placed his clawed foot on top of it. He flexed and crushed the stone into dust. Before I could process what had happened, Fenrir had lunged and attacked Amon. I had no time to react. In a swift motion he grabbed Fenrir by the throat and stared deeply into his eyes. I heard Fenrir let out a yelp and my stomach sank, and my mind went blank. I inhaled and gripped the scythe and pleaded with Behemoth to lend me his blessing once more. "Let him go, right now," I growled as blue smoke began to pour out of the scythe. It enveloped me and two blue horns of flame formed on top of my head. Oh my, this is interesting. Amon tossed Fenrir to the ground like a sack of potatoes and turned his full attention on me. Fenrir crashed to the ground and yelped. The sound caused something to snap inside of me. I had always tried to remain calm in any situation. I tiptoed through life feeling powerless and I relied so heavily on Fenrir. Every time he needed me, I would let him down. I had never felt so angry before. But it was not towards Amon. I was angry with myself for being so weak. My head began to spin, and my blood was boiling. "I will kill you," I warned. My anger boiled and my muscles tensed. I ran my fingers over the handle of Behemoth and shared my anger with him. It resonated and an explosion of power and blue flame enveloped me. Two large horns of blue flame protruded from my head. The blue symbol of an ox on my right hand burned brightly and began to hurt. "How dare you cause so much pain, instill so much fear? I was brought to purgatory specifically to deal with demons like you," I shouted. The sound of chains rattling could be heard growing louder and closer. Molten chains burst out of the symbol of an ox on my hand and melded into the handle of the silver scythe. I could immediately feel the presence and connection of Behemoth. We had resonated in a comparable way to Odin and Hugin. Behemoth's anger joined mine and I stomped my foot on the ground. Slowly a gorgeous divine arrow began to form and rise from deep within the earth. I ran my fingers through the air and a bowstring of blue flame closed the gap in the crescent moon-shaped handle of the silver scythe. I grabbed the arrow and took aim at Amon. "Leave Fenrir alone," I warned. Agatha, Odin, Grace, and Felipe were about to join me for battle when the other two demons had cut them off. Imson was nowhere to be seen. I figured Agatha warned him to flee before death had arrived earlier. Loki, "You bastard." I heard Odin mumble. I was surprised that the man was not a demon after all but Odin's adopted son. "Hola, Benita." I heard Father Felipe start to say something just before Grace smacked him with her coffin again. Agatha was silent and frozen in place. She stared at Amon with her face contorted in a mixture of fear and rage. Everyone was on guard, but no one moved. We all watched intently to see who would move first. I kept my focus on Amon. He stood there unmoving and unnerved. I was trying my best to control my breathing while calling on Behemoth's power. It took a lot of focus to align myself with Behemoth in a way that I could use his blessings. For me to be able to receive a blessing, many things must fall into place. I must first and foremost be in a decent physical state of health to handle the power Behemoth lends me. If I am unprepared or for any reason, I fail to maintain a healthy connection with Behemoth, the power of his soul will overwhelm mine and will drain all my magical energy. This forces me to fall unconscious until I can recover my magic. While I was first learning how to do this, I would end up spending many days or weeks unconsciously waiting to try again. I tightened my breath as I heard the others talking amongst themselves. Amon was terrifyingly calm. He looked different from the picture that Agatha had shown me. He no longer wore a long red robe. He wore a black tuxedo like the one Impson wore. He kept it mostly unbuttoned and a white ruffled shirt could be seen underneath. It was slightly untucked from his black slacks. Large, sharp talons protruded from his fingers. His feathers were brown, gray, and black with patches of white. His two wings were very large, and he had thousands of eyeballs sewn into countless feathers. The eyes all darted and looked around in every direction. They seemed panicked and horrified. His head, shaped like an owl, twitched, and convulsed rapidly. I do love finding interesting new things. "Well, young man, I am waiting. Show me what you and that pathetic beast can do." Amon was standing tall on top of the rubble of our broken grave. He had his arms stretched out as if he was inviting my attempt to strike him down. I exhaled and released my grip and sent the arrow loose, but it did not move at all. I blinked for a moment before realizing what had happened. A large explosion of sound hit my ears and a large whoosh of air erupted behind me in the direction of the church. The church had vanished into a puff of sawdust as it blew off in the wind. As soon as I had loosened my grip to send the arrow flying, Amon had rushed in and stopped it with minimum effort. He was holding it in place while hovering his beak in front of my face. His head twitched from side to side as he stared at me with his right eye opened as wide as it could possibly have gone. "What are you?" Amon inquired. Amon pulled the arrow out of the bowstring of blue flame and crushed it in his fingertips. He sauntered his way past me and moved towards the others. I turned slowly and cautiously as I watched his every movement. He looked at Agatha and then towards Odin. Amon's head twitched from side to side, and he began to hum a sinister melody. "I sometimes wondered if you two had the chance to meet." Amon spoke. He held out his right hand and two threads began to snake their way out of his palm. The twin threads tied to needles stabbed into two eyeballs from his left wing and pulled them into his grasp. One of the eyeballs had no pupil and was completely black. It convulsed violently in Amon's hand and unfolded into a large raven. I recognized it from the stories Odin would share. This was the Black Raven of Wisdom. "You two were coming to try to steal these back away from me? Is that why you decided to blow up my mountain?" Amon walked over and stood towering over Odin. I had looked up to Odin as this giant warrior. We had trained together and not once had I been able to get close to matching his strength. He looked tiny in comparison to Amon. Amon's two large wings enveloped Odin and thousands of eyeballs all locked their gaze upon him. That was my mountain. Odin spit into the dirt and lunged towards Amon. "Now are you?" Agatha's voice sounded so foreign, it snapped me out of my shock. I watched as Agatha took the leather-bound book out from her thigh and the large purple snake slithered its ways out of the pages. Amon dodged every strike from Odin with ease. Amon stared at Agatha with an interesting expression of curiosity on his face. Odin swung with all his effort in an attempt to pierce the demon. Hugin's reflection could be seen in the shimmering blade of the spear. It was reaching out for its other half with everything it had. It reminded me of Behemoth and Leviathan. Amon danced and dodged while playfully juggling the eyeballs while addressing Agatha. "He's been with you this whole time?" Amon barked and his head whipped around wildly. He turned his body towards Agatha and every gaze Amon had focused in on her book. Grace and Felipe took the moment and attacked the one-winged demon. They sent her flying off into the village. "Puro. Nice shot, Mima. We can manage the sexy one," Felipe said as he smiled and winked at me. "Shut the hell up and get going, father," Grace shouted. Grace spun around on her heel and smashed her coffin into Father Felipe's body. He was also sent flying off into the village. "It is supposed to be Papi," he yelled as he faded from sound. Grace turned to us and curtsied before giving chase. At the same time, Odin stabbed his spear into Loki's belly and charged off towards the forest with him impaled. We remained face to face with Amon. He seemed paralyzed in fear at the sight of the purple snake. "Where did you find him?" Amon asked in a demanding tone. Agatha stepped forward and lifted her hand with the book and the snake wrapped itself around her arm. It rested its chin on the back of her hand. Agatha slid her finger across the text in the book and the purple snake began to chant something. It seemed like it was reading the spell from the book. "Return my eye to me," Agatha warned. Amon took a deep breath and stretched. He threw up his hands and looked as if he were about to surrender when he lunged towards Agatha. Before he could lay a finger on her, he was engulfed in a purple mist. "Wench," Amon called out. "Be a dearie Tyrell. Join in any time," Agatha called as she ran to my side. I pulled myself together and stood up. "Myko," I called Fenrir. He howled with newfound courage, and I could feel the heat of his anger as he joined us. I stomped my foot on the ground and pulled another arrow out of the earth. I was surprised at how easily I was able to pull it off. I wasn't feeling the tremendous strain that I used to. This new chain link with Behemoth was making it so much easier to utilize his blessings. I grabbed the handle of my scythe and Behemoth's face appeared in the reflection. The blue ox nodded to me in agreement. "Ready?" I confirmed. I launched into the air as high as I could and pulled the arrow back as far as I could draw. I released it and sent it flying towards the purple pillar of mist. It pierced in the position that Amon was in, and I heard a loud roar. I had made a direct hit and it exploded into a fiery mass. The blast dissipated the mist and covered the area in a thick black cloud of smoke. "Nice shot, boyo, but don't let your guard down," Agatha called out. I landed and quickly stomped on the ground to form another arrow. A sharp pain shot up my leg and my calf muscles felt like they were going to burst. I pushed through the pain and formed a second arrow and placed it onto the bowstring. I drew it back and pinned it on the spot I had hit him in before. "Did we get him?" I asked. Fenrir growled and his fur began to stand on end. A large gust of wind sent the smoke in all directions and cleared the area. Amon had flexed his wings and revealed that he had been fine the entire time. He held my arrow in his fingers again and twirled it with glee. "Not even the great Okimaru's poison mist could affect me. I truly am a genius." Amon's head snapped aggressively and made cracking sounds as it twitched. "Impossible. No two-winged demon should have been able to survive a full-on attack from my cursed beast." Agatha fell to the ground in disbelief. The purple snake evaporated into more of that purple mist and vanished into the pages of the book. Amon landed on the ground gently and swaggered his way towards us. I quickly pulled back and let loose my final arrow. It soared and Amon knocked it out of the air with ease. I gripped my scythe and braced my footing. I swung and attacked Amon with everything that I had. He dodged and evaded me with ease. He crept closer as his head continued to twitch. "You are starting to get on my nerves, boy. It is time you learn some respect," Amon chirped, and before I could register it, he held me by the throat. He had his fingers just inches from my right eyeball and his long talons were poking their way closer. "You have definitely earned a position in my army. Amon whispered softly. He was just about to pluck out my eye as he had done to so many others when he stopped dead in his tracks. He quickly pulled his hand away from my face and let go of me. I landed on my butt in disbelief as he leapt backwards from me. Interesting, Amon muttered to himself. He turned and quickly moved. He pinned Fenrir to the ground, who yelped loudly from the surprise attack. Amon dug his talons into Fenrir's right eye socket and yanked out his beautiful blue eye. The soft kindness that I had always shared in my darkest moments of life was being ripped away from me. My mind went blank, and my body exploded in rage. I erupted in blue flames and smoke. I moved towards Amon. The ground began to tremble violently under the weight of my steps. I took one slow heavy step after another. The village rocked as if struck by a massive earthquake. "Give that back," I barked. Blue flames shot out of my mouth with each word. I lunged and swept my blade down onto the demon with all my might. It crashed down on him and opened a miniature crater alongside the one death had made previously. Mine was nowhere near as impressive, but it was still a massive crater. I thought I had managed to make contact, but Amon had blocked my blow with his talons like it was nothing. Amon shoved me backwards before flipping up and kicking me back onto the ground. My muscle fibers seemed to snap as I landed and my body exploded with pain. I had overused Behemoth's blessing and drained nearly all of my magical energy. I knew that I was going to be losing consciousness soon. I struggled with myself to stay awake and watch. I tend to avoid taking the eyes of Grimm's. The benefits are far from worth dealing with the curse, Amon said as a needle-tied thread came from his palm. It stabbed into Fenrir's eyeball, and I heard my best friend yelp in agony once again. I was desperate to get up and fight, but my body would not move. I tried so hard to bring myself to my feet, but I strained myself too hard. I watched in horror as Fenrir's innocence was sewn into the right wing of Amon. I vowed in that image that I would do whatever it took to burn this world to the ground and end this. I would end the cruelty of demons and break this grim curse and free Fenrir. I vowed that I would personally be the one to kill Amon. I vowed all those rages-filled thoughts as I passed out. It was not until I awoke in Amon's castle that I learned the news. We worked for Amon now.